The sun rose brightly on June 27, 1976. Air France Flight 139 departed from Tel Aviv. The flight was headed to Paris. On board were 248 passengers and 12 crew members. The flight was routine until it reached Athens. There, 4 new passengers boarded. They would change everything. Soon after takeoff from Athens, the plane was hijacked. 2 men and 2 women brandished guns and explosives. They took control. Panic gripped the passengers. The hijackers demanded a diversion to Entebbe, Uganda. The passengers were in shock. Fear loomed large. The hijackers had a clear goal. They wanted the release of 40 Palestinians jailed in Israel. They also demanded freedom for 13 other prisoners in Kenya, France, Switzerland, and Germany. The situation was tense. Everyone's lives hung in the balance. The plane landed in Entebbe. The passengers were herded into the old terminal. Hostage drama had officially begun. For 7 days, the world watched. What followed would be etched in history forever. The old terminal at Entebbe Airport was stark and cold. Hostages were cramped into its rooms. Fear was their constant companion. The hijackers were ruthless. They separated Jewish passengers from others. The Jews would be used as bargaining chips. Food and water were scarce. Sleeping on the hard floor added to their misery. The conditions were harsh. Hope seemed distant. The captors were not just armed, but also trained in cruelty. They kept watch, guns always at the ready. Days blended into nights. The hostages grew weaker. Health concerns rose. There was little medical help. Anxiety was high. Questions filled their minds. Would they survive? Would anyone come to their rescue? The hijackers' demands hung over them like a dark cloud. There were moments of small kindness, a hijacker giving a child a sweet, a guard allowing a sick person more water. But these moments were rare. Mostly, it was a time of waiting for a miracle, waiting for salvation. Several key figures played roles in this drama. The hijackers, of course, were at the forefront. But there were many others. Each had a part to play. Each influenced the events in some way. The hostages were ordinary people caught in an extraordinary situation. They were men, women, and children. They came from different backgrounds. Their only commonality was being on Flight 139. They showed incredible bravery. Even in dire circumstances, they held on to hope. The Israeli government faced a tough decision. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Defense Minister Shimon Peres were central figures. They had to choose between negotiation and force. They chose force. It was a risky decision, but they believed in it. The Ugandan forces under dictator Idi Amin added another layer of complexity. Initially, Amin pretended to be a mediator, but his true intentions were suspect. He supported the hijackers. His forces guarded the hostages. It was a volatile mix. The hijackers were a mix of Germans and Palestinians. The Germans were Wilfried Bose and Brigitte Kuhlmann from the revolutionary cells. The Palestinians were from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, External Operations, PFLP-EO. They were motivated and ruthless. Wilfried Bose was a charismatic leader. He had a clear mission. He demanded the release of jailed comrades. Brigitte Kuhlmann was equally committed. She showed no mercy. The Palestinian hijackers were experienced. They had carried out similar operations before. They were well prepared. They had weapons and explosives. They knew the risks. They were willing to die for their cause. They chose Entebbe because they had support there. Idi Amin offered them a safe haven. They believed they could get away with it. Their plan was to use hostages as leverage. They underestimated the resolve of the Israeli government. They thought Israel would negotiate. They thought wrong. Their overconfidence would be their undoing. Section 5. The Israeli Response. News of the hijacking reached Israel quickly. The government was in turmoil. Yitzhak Rabin called an emergency meeting. Lives were at stake. Time was running out. But Israel had a policy of not negotiating with terrorists. Rabin and Shimon Peres debated the next steps. They considered a military rescue. It was a bold move. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, were called into action. Lieutenant General Mordecai Gur led the planning. They needed intelligence and a detailed plan. They even built a replica of the terminal for practice. The plan was coming together, but there was still an element of risk. Section 6. Planning the impossible. The planning for Operation Thunderbolt was intricate. Every detail was scrutinized. Timing was crucial. The element of surprise was essential. The team included elite commandos from Sayeret Matkal. They were the best of the best. The plan involved flying over 4,000 kilometers to Entebbe. They would land under the cover of darkness. They had to avoid detection. The commandos trained rigorously. They practiced every scenario. They prepared for every possibility. Vehicles were modified. A black Mercedes resembling Idi Amin's car was used. It would help them gain entry to the airport. They also had Land Rovers for fast movement. Every minute counted. They had to be swift and precise. Communication was key. They had to coordinate with the hostages. They needed to know the exact positions of the guards. They had to avoid harming the hostages. It was a delicate operation. Any mistake could be fatal. But they were ready. They were determined. Section 7, Operation Thunderbolt, the countdown. The countdown to the operation began. The commandos boarded Hercules C-130 cargo planes. They were filled with equipment and supplies. The tension was palpable. The flight was long. They had time to reflect, but there was no room for doubt. They flew low to avoid radar detection. The pilots were skilled. They navigated the treacherous route. The commandos reviewed their plans. They mentally prepared for the mission. They knew the stakes. Failure was not an option. As they neared Entebbe, the mood shifted. Adrenaline surged. They were about to make history. They knew the risks. They were aware of the dangers. But they were resolute. They were ready to execute the plan. The planes landed at Entebbe around midnight. The commandos quickly disembarked. They moved swiftly. They had rehearsed this moment countless times. Now, it was real. The rescue mission was in motion. Time was of the essence. Section 8, Storming Entebbe Airport. The commandos advanced towards the old terminal. The black Mercedes led the way. It was a clever disguise. It allowed them to get close without raising suspicion. But the element of surprise was short-lived. Guards opened fire. The commandos responded swiftly. They neutralized the guards. They stormed the building. They shouted in Hebrew, "Stay down! Stay down!" It was a signal to the hostages. The hostages dropped to the floor. The commandos identified the hijackers. They engaged them in a firefight. The battle was intense but brief. The commandos were well trained. They eliminated the hijackers. They secured the hostages. They moved quickly. They escorted the hostages to the waiting planes. The rescue was almost complete, but there were casualties. Yonatan Netanyahu, the mission commander, was fatally wounded. His loss was a blow, but the mission had to continue. The commandos ensured all hostages were accounted for. They boarded the planes. They were on their way home. Section 9. The Aftermath and Reactions. The planes took off from Entebbe. The hostages were safe. The mission was a success. It was a moment of triumph. But it was also a moment of sorrow. Yonatan Netanyahu's death cast a shadow. He was a hero, but he paid the ultimate price. The world reacted with awe. The daring rescue was unprecedented. Israel's resolve was clear. They would not bow to terrorism. They showed the world that courage and skill could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Families reunited with their loved ones. It was a moment of joy and relief. The hostages shared their harrowing experiences. Their tales of bravery and resilience inspired many. The commandos were hailed as heroes. They had achieved the impossible. But there were also criticisms. Some questioned the use of force. Others pointed to the loss of lives. The debate was complex. But the success of the mission overshadowed the criticisms. It was a defining moment in the fight against terrorism. Section 10. The Global Impact. The Entebbe rescue had a profound impact. It changed the way nations dealt with terrorism. It showed that negotiation was not the only option. It demonstrated the effectiveness of military precision. It set a new standard for hostage rescues. Countries around the world took note. They improved their counter-terrorism strategies. They invested in special forces. They learned from Israel's example. The rescue became a case study. It was analyzed and emulated. The political landscape also shifted. Israel's bold move strengthened its position. It sent a clear message to terrorists. It showed that acts of terror would not go unpunished. It was a deterrent. It made terrorists think twice before targeting Israelis. The rescue also had a human impact. It gave hope to those living under the threat of terrorism. It showed that even in the darkest times there could be light. It inspired a sense of resilience. It was a reminder that bravery and determination could prevail. Section 11. The Legacy of Entebbe. The legacy of the Entebbe rescue lives on. It is remembered as one of the most daring operations in military history, a symbol of courage and ingenuity, a testament to the human spirit, studied in military academies, a benchmark for special forces. Its lessons are timeless. Personal stories add depth to the legacy, highlighting the sacrifices made, a story of hope and courage. Humanity can prevail, inspiring generations.